The Tennessee Titans report to training camp in just over a week. Tuesday, July 23rd, rookies and veterans will be reporting. We are going to do a training camp preview part 1 today. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, like I said, we are starting training camp previews. We got a 2-part series coming this week. Today, we are going to look at the key dates to know for the training camp and preseason, and also look at the Titans' overhauled roster. So if you're one of those fans that sort of tunes out during the offseason, or you just forgot some of the moves the Titans made, we're going to compare the 2023 Week 1 starting lineup to the 2024 projected starting lineup, with the obvious caveat that they have an entire training camp and preseason to figure out that starting lineup. But we're going to go through all that today, and then later in the week, we're going to look at the biggest storylines for training camp that we are all going to be following and tracking very closely. Justin, how's it going? Excited for the return of football?
I sure am. I think it was you sent me a message yesterday saying we're, 8 Sundays away from the first Titans game of the season. I mean, that feels closer than I thought it was, right? When you put it in those terms. And now we got training camp here in a few days and all the storylines to watch. I'm pumped, man. The timeline is going to be filled with NFL training camp content in just a few days' time. Yeah,
I cannot wait. There's a couple teams, the Hall of Fame game teams are reporting already this week. It's getting there. Like, we are into football season, essentially. So, all right, let's go through some key dates. Before we do, I want to remind everyone listening that we appreciate you and we thank you for your support. But if you could watch us on the Music City Audible YouTube channel, we'd appreciate that even more. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you're subscribed to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up and turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. And thanks also to our sponsor. This video is presented by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. More to come on Sinkers and Bluegrass, so stay tuned for that. All right, key dates to know, Justin. The first one, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Tuesday, July 23rd, rookies and veterans report for training camp. I don't imagine they'll take the field that day. They might, I don't know. I mean, they haven't released a daily schedule yet. I imagine that's like a reporting day, meeting day, weigh in. They'll probably do conditioning tests that day, so they'll go on the field for a little bit. And then they'll really probably start training camp practices on July 24th. Saturday, July 27th, put this one in your calendar, especially if you're a local Nashville Titans fan. At 10 a.m. Central Time, the Titans are hosting a free open practice at Nissan Stadium. You can go sign up to claim a ticket for that on the Titans website right now, so check that out. And then Saturday, August 10th at 6 p.m., after a couple weeks of training camp practices, the Titans will kick off the preseason Week 1 at home against the San Francisco 49ers. It's going to be interesting to see how much the starters play. Brian Callahan has hinted that the starters will get a good bit of run during the preseason, which is not something we're used to seeing under Mike Vrabel here in Tennessee. So very interested to track that. Then on Wednesday, August 14th, the Titans will begin joint practices in Nashville with the Seattle Seahawks. So Seahawks coming into town. They'll do a couple days of joint practices, Wednesday and Thursday, I'd imagine. And then Saturday, August 17th, also at 6 p.m. Central Time, is preseason Week 2 against those Seahawks. I would imagine the starters probably play less in that game since they just practiced against the Seahawks for 2 days, but who knows? We'll see what Brian Callahan likes to do. The final preseason game is a week and a day later on Sunday, August 25th, 1 p.m. Central Time. Preseason Week 3 at the New Orleans Saints. So the Titans get 2 home preseason games and then 1 road preseason game. A couple days later, on Tuesday, August 27th, by 3 p.m. Central Time, that is the deadline to cut down rosters from 90 to 53 players. Remember, last year, the NFL did away with the mid-level cutting down. So it's just all in one cut down day from 90 to 53. Then we have a little bit of a break. The Titans will gear up with normal practice schedule as they prepare for Week 1 on Sunday, September 8th, 12 p.m. Central, kickoff at the Chicago Bears. So those are the dates to know, Justin. Anything in particular stand out to you? I kind of want to talk about joint practices, but want to know if anything stands out.
Well, that's always the best part of it, in my opinion, honestly. Like you typically learn more from the joint practices than you do the actual preseason games, right? Because everything's so vanilla. Think a little like the Senior Bowl, right? Like everyone wants to show up to those practices, those one-on-one sessions. Then they go home before the game actually kicks off. But and the Seahawks will be a good test. You know, you want to talk about the new look offensive line here in Tennessee. just look over the defensive line there. They've got Draymond Jones in Seattle, signed him to a big contract last year. They traded for, was it Leonard Williams at the trade deadline last year, and they re-signed him to a big deal. And they've spent approximately 76 draft picks on pass rushers lately. Like, they don't stop. Like Darrell Taylor from Tennessee, Boye Mafe a couple years ago from Minnesota. They drafted Derek Hall, I think, this year out of Auburn. So it's like they've got a ton of young, good Uchenna Nwosu joined them free agency a couple of years ago. So a ton of good young pass rushers on the edge there, and a couple of decent interior guys with like Leonard Williams and Draymond Jones. So I'm really looking forward to the joint practices. And one Titans coach that I wish was still on this staff, in all honesty, will be returning. People don't even remember, although I do like the hire they made in his spot. Charles London's the quarterback coach over there in Seattle now. And not to mention, I just reminded my own damn self.
I was going to say whatever you're about to say, but go ahead.
I know you were about to say Mike McDonald over there, the head coach in Seattle, Denard Wilson, the defensive coordinator in Tennessee, worked together with the Ravens last year. Hopefully we'll get a hint of some similarities and some differences between their schemes as their two teams go up against one another in joint practices. So that's the part of it. I mean, look, I can't wait till they report to training camp so I can just see all the videos on my timeline and the storylines that'll come with it and the highlights of Will Levis hits Calvin Ridley down the sideline. But it's the joint practices that I think we'll really, really learn some stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple other little connections that are definitely smaller than what you mentioned there. But Jerome Baker, the linebacker free agent, who the Titans showed a lot of interest in this offseason, ended up signing with Seattle. So they'll get an up close and personal look at him. And then, of course, the recent signing the Titans just made, Jamal Adams, spent a number of years just fresh off the Seahawks roster, so he'll have a chance and a chip on his shoulder during those practices, I'm sure, to prove himself to the Seahawks and that they made a mistake releasing him. I also think, just as we talk about joint practices, and we'll probably get into this more when they get closer, because this isn't, again, until August 14th, but a couple little things that stand out just at the tip of my tongue here. This is going to be a great test for both the cornerbacks and the secondary. Two units for the Titans that have been cornerbacks and receivers, I meant to say. 2 units that have been totally rebuilt here in Nashville. Obviously, you got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba coming into his second year, first-round pick last year. That's a great test for the new look secondary. Obviously, L'Jarius Sneed, Cheeto Awuzie, Roger McCreary. They're going to have their hands full in one-on-ones and team periods. We're going to love to see those battles between DK Metcalf and L'Jarius Sneed, 2 guys who are extremely physical. Can't wait for that. And then on the other side, Reek Woolen, Michael Jackson at cornerback for the Seahawks, Artie Burns and Trey Brown, 2 talented cornerbacks as well. Obviously, Devon Witherspoon, another first-round pick last year, number 5 overall, I think, something like that.
5 overall, their best corner.
Their best corner.
Gloss over
Yeah. Well, I know I was save the best for last, Justin. So a great test for Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, and then those wide receivers at the back end of the depth chart trying to prove themselves there. You're going to have some really fun one-on-ones. I think, the wide receiver cornerback one-on-ones in these joint practices are always the best part, I think, to watch as far as non-team period stuff goes. But man, it's going to be really cool to see this high-level battle. So that's high level, we're very early, but that's what I'm really looking forward to with these joint practices.
Oh, no, you hit the nail on the head. And I think of the Titans week 1 matchup, you're going to see DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze with the Chicago Bears. Pretty good way to get prepped for that is to go up against 3 outstanding receivers. I mean, the Titans will be prepped in practice, right? Going up against Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Boyd, as you said. But you get tired of seeing the same faces every single day. So a chance to go up against DK, Tyler Lockett, and JSN will be great prep for week 1 with the Chicago Bears. Yeah,
no doubt about it. All right, so let's talk about the roster, Justin. This is the other thing I wanted to hit in this training camp preview video. This is the part where I mentioned if you kind of tuned out during the offseason, we're going to catch you up. We're not going to go through every move. We're not going to go through every transaction, but we are going to look at the starting 11 on both the offense and the defense and look at just how many starters are even returning from week 1 of last season and where are we projecting guys that we think are going to start, but we're not sure. And just how different this roster. I mean, it's been completely overhauled, and I think there's been a little bit of a deal made about it in national media, but not nearly a big enough deal. Like when the national media talks about what the Titans did this offseason, they mentioned they brought in Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed, and maybe they say Tony Pollard. But there is a lot of turnover on this roster, so I want to go through it. So first, let's start on the offense. I'm just going to go through position by position, and then we'll dissect it in a second. So Quarterback, 2023 Week 1 starter, Ryan Tannehill, obviously. 2024 projected starter, Will Levis. So a lot younger, a guy with a lot of upside, but something we really need to see him do it on the field to feel super confident, although Titans fans are definitely excited, and they should be, about what Will Levis could be. Running back, obviously, Derrick Henry is gone. It's either going to be Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears. So if you're looking at the graphic on screen here, I just have a slash between them because we're not sure who's really the starter or if it even matters. Wide receiver, returning starter, DeAndre Hopkins remains. The other wide receiver spot, Treylon Burks, was a starter in Week 1 last year. It's kind of hard to believe and remember that that's where the Titans roster was. Now it's Calvin Ridley starting there. And then last year, the Titans started in a 12 personnel set. This is a projection for me, but I'm projecting that with Brian Callahan here and the offseason moves they made, they're going to open the year in 11 personnel. So instead of Trayvon Wesco being a starter, it's Tyler Boyd. That's a massive upgrade. The other tight end spot, I put Chigakonkwo in here for now, Justin, as a returning starter. But hey, this could be Josh Wiley. This could be, another change here in the starting lineup. Left tackle, the offensive line. We know the offensive line has been totally overhauled. Left tackle last season, Andre Dillard. This season, J.C. Latham. Left guard, Peter Skoronski, the only returning player on the offensive line. He will remain at left guard. Center, from Aaron Brewer to Lloyd Cushenberry. Right guard, from Daniel Brunskill to, we're projecting Sadiq Charles. Right tackle, Chris Hubbard, to, we're projecting Nicholas Petit-Frere wins that job. So if we count Chigakonkwo, which we should right now, I think, that gives us just 3 returning starters on the offense in DeAndre Hopkins, Chigakonkwo, and Peter Skoronski. That's wild. Now, Nicholas Petit-Frere was here and on the roster last year.
I was about to say.
But Chris Hubbard was the starter because Petit-Frere was suspended to start the season last year. So, I
put an asterisk next to that one, though, because it would have been Petit-Frere. No doubt about it. It would have been.
So we'll say 3.5 returning starters because we're still sort of projecting on Chig and we're sort of projecting on Petit-Frere anyway. But that's a huge overhaul. I mean, how much, what can you just talk a little bit about the difference this is going to make? I mean,
sometimes 1 + 1 = 2, right? The offense was so bad last year. They should only have 2 or 3 or 4 returning starters, right? Like, there's no way you could watch them last year and be like, yeah, run that back, right? Like, it should be a ton of overall. And it's funny. Obviously, I'm not seeing the graphic on the screen, and I didn't quite look at it before we recorded. I was hoping you had it in 12 personnel because I was thinking, I'm like, man, Trayvon Wesco, like, how he's got Trayvon Wesco as a starter because it was a 12 personnel offense with Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly. So you hit the nail on the head there. It is going to be 11 personnel. I think there's no doubt about that. They don't go get Tyler Boyd if it's not 11 personnel. And Brian Callahan's history strongly indicates that it's always 11 personnel. So at least under his shot calling, if you will. No, I mean, like, I don't have a ton to say outside of it. It's different, and it should be different. They went out and got guys that fit this offense, that fit this scheme. We've talked a lot about, maybe not enough about Lloyd Cushenberry and how good he is in pass protection. He only allowed 14 pressures. Like, when I saw that number, it doesn't even click for me, right? I'm used to seeing like 43 pressures, 57 pressures when I think of Titans offensive linemen and how many 14. Like, Andre Dillard allowed that in 3 quarters, it felt like, right? Like, there's no way that they've got an offensive lineman on this team that allowed 14 pressures all of last season. So I think that's a big one, and it kind of signals how different this offense is going to look because they want to be pass happy, and they were smart enough to say, hey, let's go get one of the best pass protecting centers out, the best one that was on the market in Lloyd Cushenberry. So when I look at it, they went out and got guys, obviously the familiarity with Boyd and Callahan. You can add Calvin Ridley in there with passing game coordinator Nick Holtz, who has spent his entire life, essentially, since he came out the womb around the Callahans. Right. So he's so well-versed in their offense. You talk about that comfort level there as well. They went out and got guys that these coaches know, right? Or ones that fit the scheme, like a Cushenberry. So,
and Sadiq Charles is another guy that they know that fits a scheme they don't have necessarily familiarity with that we know of, but Sadiq Charles, I'm sure they looked at him coming out.
Well, I guess.
Yeah. Cushenberry has familiarity.
Yeah. Technically, I just remembered running backs coach Randy Jordan was with the Commanders last year, right? So he'll know. Again, he's the running backs coach, but some sense of familiarity there with one of the offensive assistants. But Callahan, as we know, Bill Callahan, that is, went out and talked about him fitting the scheme and being a target for them in unrestricted free agency. So they went out, they overhauled this offense, and they did it by getting guys they either are familiar with or ones that they think are a great fit, like a Lloyd Cushenberry, of course. And was Tyke Tolbert, was he still in Denver last year? Would he know Lloyd Cushenberry? I can't recall, but I can't recall right in this very moment. You're looking it up. I can see the Google searching face.
No.
Where was Tyke Tolbert last year?
Chicago Bears last 2 years.
That's right, the Bears. Yes, we talked about the Darnell Mooney connection in free agency at the time. But the point is they went out and got guys the staff's either familiar with or ones that they think fit the scheme. So they overhauled this offense, and they should have, because it was terrible last season.
Yeah, I think there's a couple little hinge points here before we move on to the defense. I'm going to quickly go through. Hinge points meaning if this player is good, the Titans offense can be good. If this player struggles, the Titans offense as a whole will likely struggle. The obvious one there is Will Levis. I don't think we need to go too in depth there. We did a whole episode on his ceiling and floor. We've done countless other episodes looking at his projections for the season and all kinds of stuff. So Will Levis is the obvious one there. The other big one for me is JC Latham, which Titans fans are rightfully very excited about his potential as the new stalwart left tackle, bookend left tackle, whatever you want to call it. But he's a rookie. He's a rookie making a position change, coming into the NFL level. Obviously, he played big-time football at Alabama, but he did all of it at right tackle. We've gone in depth on JC Latham on this podcast, but if you tuned out for most of the offseason, he played left tackle in high school, so it's not an unfamiliar position for him, but against this level of competition, it certainly will be. So we got to see. I mean, I expect JC Latham to hit the ground running and be good, especially under the tutelage of Bill Callahan, but we got to see it before we can really be confident in it. And if he struggles and it's, more of the same left tackle play, it's in terms of level of play over there, then this Titans offense may not take that big of a step forward this year. How important do you think is JC Latham being at least league average from week one to this Titans offense?
Well, it's super important. I mean, I think it was the four players who played left tackle for the Titans last season allowed a combined 92 pressures. I think that's an actual stat. Like Andre Dillard, Jalen Duncan, who have John Ajoku, maybe briefly, I don't know, Petit Friere, I think was in there for a little bit, but 92 pressures at left tackle. Maybe not. The four guys played left tackle last year. I mean, Dillard and Duncan mostly. And they probably alone combined for like 80 of those pressures. But
did Radens get some snaps out there?
Maybe it was someone did. There was a fourth guy for sure. But I think honestly, when you look at that stat and you look at how badly that hamstrung the offense, it's obvious that there's a lot of pressure for JC Latham to perform this year. And it's something we haven't really talked about a whole lot, but we're all excited about him. We all just kind of expect him to be really good, right? Because we love the personality. We love the attitude. He's a top 10 pick. You fell in love with him throughout OTAs and minicamp with the sleds and the approach and the work ethic. That's all. We love all that. But then it's going to come time to perform, right? And it's going to happen soon. So there's a lot of pressure for him to do so, because if he's bad or he's not great, then it could certainly be a blow to this offense like it was all throughout 2023.
But what I will say as an sign of encouragement is just the amount of work that we've seen him putting in already. The last guy on the field, out there in thunderstorms with Ran Carthon having to come out there and tell him to get off the field because it's dangerous. Like, he's the last guy working every single day, working that sled, working his technique. So I do have all the faith in him. It's just a lot of the offense is going to depend on his success. Last position on offense before we flip over to the defense I want to hit is running back, just because Titans fans have grown very, very accustomed to seeing a certain player line up as running back over the last 6, 8, how many years has it been since they drafted Henry? Was it 2016?
I think it was 8.
Yeah,
right?
8 years in Tennessee, 6 years as like the full-time starter. It's going to be a different look. Now, obviously, Tajay Spears was here last year, and, this applies to a few of these positions where players were here last year, but they weren't the starter. Like, obviously, Will Levis is one of those too. But it's going to be different. We don't know if Pollard or Spears is going to take that first snap of week one, but it doesn't really matter because both guys are going to see a lot of action. I think the way that Callahan used Joe Mixon and Chase Brown last year towards the end of the season, obviously Chase Brown was a rookie for Cincinnati. It was a lot more even split towards the end of the season than it was at the beginning of the season, but both guys capable of running between the tackles, both guys capable of hitting the hole hard, making that one cut and bursting up the field. Both guys capable as receivers out of the backfield. We saw, especially that Miami game last year, Tajay Spears is a huge weapon out of the backfield. Tony Pollard has been making plays as a receiver his entire career in Dallas. So I'm really excited to see the new look running back room, because it's going to be a lot different than the 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of offense the Titans tried to run with Derrick Henry, where it was like, hopefully he just, we keep hitting this hole over and over again. Hopefully he pops one eventually. I think it's going to be a lot more line up in 11 personnel like we've been discussing, take advantage of lighter boxes, running a lot more out of shotgun. Like, this is going to be a much different running style offense. And not just from those perspectives, but even like big picture, it's not really going to be a zone-based scheme anymore. It's going to be gap-based, which is more about offensive linemen getting a hat on a hat and moving their man off the line of scrimmage. So I think we're going to see a lot fewer tight formations where you're bringing defenders in the box, where your, slot wide receiver has to throw a block on a safety. They're going to spread these guys out and run that way, which I think takes advantage of the skill sets of Pollard and Spears, who are both guys that can make defenders miss in space. So really excited. I mean, the Derrick Henry era was awesome. Titans fans will never forget it. One of, if not the greatest player in franchise history, 2,000-yard season, the 99-yard run versus Jacksonville, the playoff run in 2019 where he put the whole team on his back and ran through the Patriots and the Ravens to get the Titans to the AFC Championship. Obviously, we will remember that era fondly forever. But that said, I'm pretty excited to see what we're going to call a modern offense in Nashville, finally, for the first time ever.
I am as well. And I'm going to get us ready to shift to the defensive side of the ball. But the last point I want to make on offense is we started this conversation, or this part of the conversation, with guys who are under pressure to perform, or the offense is going to be good and or bad, so on and so forth. 3 spots we're probably not expecting a ton of production out of. But imagine if they are good, is what I'm going to say, and how good this offense can be. What if they do get great production from the tight end spot? Whether it's Chig or Josh Wiley, it doesn't matter. What if they get great production from one of them or both of them? And what about if Sadiq Charles is really good at right guard, or Nicholas Petit-Frere takes that step and becomes a long-term solution at right tackle, as opposed to like the bridge sort of option that he probably is right now? Imagine those 3 spots. If they're good, then this offense can be outstanding.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So that is a lot to look forward to on the offensive side of the ball. Let's dig into the defense here. But before we do, let's remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Sinkers Beverages is the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check out the link in this podcast description, you can join the In Crowd. In-crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. So check out Sinkers Beverages today. All right, flipping over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, 2023 Week 1 starters versus 2024 projected starters. There's a few places we're projecting here. And one big difference, just like I went from 12 personnel to 11 personnel with the offense, I'm going to go from a base, what they call base 4-3 defense with only 2 cornerbacks on the field for last year, which is how the Titans depth chart was listed, to a nickel formation as the base defense for this 2024 defense, because with Denard Wilson as a former DB coach and with the additions they made in free agency, I think they're going to live most of the time in this nickel defense as their base. So defensive end / defensive tackle last year, Danico Autry. This year, that is likely Tavondre Sweat. That's a projection, but we're expecting Tavondre Sweat, 2nd-round pick, to be the starter. Last year, nose tackle, Tier Tart. This year, no real nose tackle because, again, it's a nickel formation, so I'm not even putting a nose tackle here. Defensive tackle, obviously a returning starter here, Jeffrey Simmons, the anchor of the defense, especially the front 7, will return, of course, on a big contract that he's playing through now. Outside linebacker, Arden Key, another returning starter there. Then going across the formation, inside linebacker from Azeez Al-Shire last year, who was pretty good, to Kenneth Murray this year. We'll see if that's an upgrade. We'll see about that. We'll come back to this question. Inside linebacker next to him, Jack Gibbons. We are projecting right now at the beginning of training camp that Jack Gibbons will win that job. Outside linebacker, another returning starter, Harold Landry. And then we get to some of the differences. So nose tackle was Tier Tart. Now we're going nickelback. Roger McCreary, who's obviously been with the Titans and played a ton of snaps last year, so I'm actually counting him as a returning starter, even though technically, according to the depth chart last year, he wasn't, but he played enough snaps to be considered a returning starter. And then some changes. Cornerback L'Jarius Sneed replaces cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting. On the other side of the field, cornerback Chido Awuzie replaces cornerback Christian Fulton. And then a little swap here. I had free safety last year, Kevin Byard. Strong safety last year, Amani Hooker. with the addition of Jamal Adams, we're going to slide Amani Hooker over to free safety, slot Jamal Adams in at strong safety, and including Roger McCreary, that gives us 6 returning starters from last year: Jeffrey Simmons, Arden Key, Jack Gibbons, Harold Landry, Roger McCreary, and Amani Hooker. So, in total, between 22 spots on offense and defense, just 9 guys return as starters. And of course, there's the Will Levis, the Tajay Spears, the guys that were here. But just 9 guys return as starters, and that's if we count Chig as winning the tight end 1 job and don't count Nicholas Petit-Frere. So 9 or 10 starters returning out of 22. Again, this is a ton of turnover. Justin, let's start with the question: is Kenneth Murray an upgrade over Azeez Al-Shaair?
I'm going to guess no. Azeez Al-Shaair finished like 5th in tackles last year. I know tackles aren't the end-all, be-all, but he had like 160 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't need that to tell me that he was pretty good. He was pretty good. Like the eye test said he's a pretty good linebacker. That's why he got a pretty decent-sized pay raise to go to the Houston Texans. So, No, I don't think he's an upgrade. But honestly, I'm more interested in talking about this group as a collective than I am individual players like we did on offense. Because the biggest question to me, the largest unknown to me, and it's the most exciting part of this conversation by far, is I'm not certain, you're not certain, no one should claim they're 100% certain of how this defense is going to look, because this is Denard Wilson being a first-time defensive coordinator. There are lots of hints, but you know what I mean. It's a lot easier to project the offense, because Brian Callahan was an offensive coordinator for 5 years with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he was very much in lockstep with Zach Taylor, with what they ran up there schematically.
Right.
With Denard Wilson, you're talking about a DB coach, first-time DC. We can take some hints. He's talked a lot about taking influence from Todd Bowles and Greg Williams, right? 2 of his mentors. He coached under Williams, I believe, with the Rams, and then Bowles with the Jets. Both of those guys are some of the most aggressive defensive minds in all of football. Blitz, cover 0 at times. Like, they want to get after the ball. And he's talked a little about that. Is it going to be exactly the same? I don't know. I find it a little weird. He hasn't talked a lot about Mike McDonald ever. And that was how he spent last year.
Right.
And they were like the best defensive league. I think they were number 1 in sacks with 60.
Yep.
Right. But he's talked very little about Mike McDonald and the influence maybe he's had on his career. And Mike McDonald, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty different defense from what Todd Bowles and Greg Williams run or have ran. Right. Bowles currently still in, Williams more a thing of the past, but very different schematically. So that's the most exciting question to me about this group. And I've got concerns about the depth. I've got concerns about, depth at edge. I'm concerned still about linebacker. I'm concerned about safety, D tackle depth. Devondre Sweat hasn't really gotten it together yet. Thankfully, he's got time to do so. But the most interesting thing to me is how are they going to line up? Because we're here talking in exacts about the offense, as we should be, right? Because we know enough. I don't think we could do that with the same confidence level, because we're probably not going to know until the season. Because he's not going to show you a bunch of training camp. They're not going to be playing vanilla in preseason, right? So that's the only thing, honestly, I'm interested in talking about this defense.
Yeah, and when it comes to, that Todd Bowles, Greg Williams style and getting after the quarterback, they brought in 2 guys whose best trait as non-pass rushing players is blitzing in both Kenneth Murray and Jamal Adams. Like, those guys are great against the run as well, but really the thing that they do better than most people at their position.
I'm going to stop short of calling Kenneth Murray great against the run. I'm sorry. Okay. I think you even might want to take that one back.
That's a good call. I was thinking of Jamal Adams more when I said that. And like Kenneth Murray can play the run. I was also mostly contrasting his ability to cover against the play against the pass.
Yeah, I figured.
But yes, no, that's a good call out. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, guys that can blitz better than most players at their position in Murray and Jamal Adams. Now, is that like the best trait you want your defenders to have as non-pass rushers? I don't know. We'll see if it works out. But the Titans' goal is clear to me. It's get the stickiest corners and most physical corners you can in coverage, who are going to not just stay on their man, but disrupt the timing and disrupt the routes of the receivers that they're covering, and allow those blitzers and that, extra pressure that you're bringing to get home before the quarterback can find an outlet. And you hope that those corners are so stuck on those receivers or disrupt the routes enough that the quarterback doesn't have time to come off of his primary read, which is more often than not going to be your wide receiver 1 as the first read, to find wide open linebackers and running backs over the middle who are abusing Jamal Adams and Kenneth Murray whenever they're not blitzing, right? I mean, that's kind of I'm maybe simplifying it a little too much, but that's kind of what the overall philosophy appears to be. So yes, very excited to talk about the defense more when we do our part 2 training camp preview, when we're talking about storylines to watch. A little tease for you guys. We're going to talk about, Tavondre Sweat as a storyline to watch, the inside linebacker position, more about Jamal Adams, more about, the safety position and the defensive end position in general. That's our defensive storylines to watch. On offense, we're going to talk about Will Levis. We're going to talk about the offensive line position battles, the tight end battle, and a little bit to do with special teams. So stay tuned for that. It's coming later this week. Justin, any final thoughts before we say goodbye for this episode?
No, I'm excited that we've got a part 2 coming training camp. It's going to drop just in a few days if you're watching this when it debuts, and I know you are because you love this podcast. So a double episode release this week, and that's even before training camp. So good stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to get everyone ready and excited and geared up with the knowledge that they need to follow training camp in the best possible way, right? So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed to the Music City Audible channel. Give this video a like, thumbs up, and turn on channel alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. Thanks again to Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. As I mentioned, you can head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check the link in this podcast description to join the In Crowd. In Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Plus, Sinkers Beverages is on Uber Eats, so if you don't have time to get over to the store, just search up Sinkers Beverages on your Uber Eats app, and you can have everything you need delivered straight to your house. All right, that'll do it for this one. Until later this week for part 2, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.